Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley, and I am the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. All of us live with what could be described as treasure chests of genius just waiting to be discovered. The question is, how can you find those treasures? My guest, Michael Gelb, is one of the world's leading authorities on the application of genius thinking and could be considered the Indiana Jones of finding people's treasures. And as you'll hear, he has done so much in his life. He once taught Mick Jagger how to juggle. You'll also hear how to discover the gifts that can make your life truly vital and full of delight. Michael is the author of 17 books, including How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, a book that provides superb prompts to find your genius and ideas for being creative like Da Vinci. I have been a fan of Michael's work for well over a decade and have read many of his books. His real-world solutions have helped me immensely. In this episode, you'll receive great tips from a true master of tapping into your unique treasures. So listen in as Michael and I have a user-friendly discussion about finding your hidden genius. Michael Gelb, welcome to Super Psyched.
I am super psyched to be with you.
Oh, right on, man. I have been a fan of your work since 2008 when a graduate school professor handed me How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. And it was really just an odd series of circumstances that led me to you. I engaged in the 100-question exercise and love it. And we'll probably talk about that at some point. I've given it out to many clients since that time. I put it out in my newsletter. And I thought, why not contact Michael Gelb? And lo and behold, you were my brother that I had never met before. And I've subsequently read, in preparation for this, 3 of your books. And just want to give the listener a little bit of a background. I mean, you have one of the most fascinating lives I've ever come across in terms of variety of experiences and areas of expertise. You're a high-profile juggler who opened for the Rolling Stones, a business school instructor at Fordham University, a teacher of the body through both the Alexander technique and martial arts, a wine aficionado, the author of at least 17 books, a highly sought-after executive coach and international speaker, and most importantly, from where I sit, a person who constantly reinvents himself at a stage in life when people might rest on their laurels. And I'm wondering, with that in mind, can you describe a little bit about your life so the listener can have a quick snippet of who you are and where you've been, as well as what drives you to push yourself to new levels of knowledge and accomplishment?
When I was born, most wonderful thing your mother could say to you is that the happiest moment of her life was the moment that you were born. So I think that's an incredible blessing. But my mom also said she had no idea what to do with me, that I just came out with this just outrageous amount of energy. So the real answer to that question is I've been attempting to manage that energy, which could have gone in any direction. Mm-hmm. You know, my mom was a psychologist. And she did say to me something early on in my life that was a profound continuing influence. She said, always use your anxiety creatively. And that's one of those life-changing statements because that's what I've done. That's what I've done. So the anxiety, if it gets channeled, becomes enthusiasm, it becomes creativity, it gets transformed. If it doesn't, it can easily become self-destructive, addictive, and so on and so forth. It's just the blessing of being aimed in the right direction by my mom, and then meeting extraordinary teachers along the way and having incredible learning opportunities that continue to this moment.
That's just wonderful. And I love the idea of rechanneling your anxiety. I've got plenty of it. And one of the hilarious things about our very first conversation was it was not a typical first conversation. Within 2 minutes, you and I were deep and in recognition that we are very similar. And I have mentioned to my listeners many times that I'm kind of the Hair Club for Men president when it comes to anxiety. I don't just treat anxiety, I also suffer from it. And, you say I'm not just the president of the Hair Club for Men, I'm also a member. But the idea of rechanneling your anxiety because the energy is there and using that as fuel to just excel is probably one of the best prescriptions a person could ever receive, because all humans have anxiety. It's just the knowledge that we're going to die leaves us with that. And oftentimes other things in life increase that anxiety. So I love your prescription, and your mom, what a genius. Is she still with us, by the way? Or is her memory?
My mom and dad next Thursday will celebrate their 70th wedding anniversary.
Oh, come on, man. That is fantastic. Please convey my heartiest congratulations and gratitude for bringing you into the world and all of your gifts. Michael, in your numerous books, you come up with actionable tips that help people improve their lives in every way imaginable. What are some of the tips that have made the biggest impact on your own life?
Well, I'd say more than anything, it is knowing what the self is more than a technique. Mind mapping as a tool, as a technique, as a tip, as a thing to do. I've written all my books using mind mapping. It's something I teach in a lot of my books. I teach it in my seminars. It's a simple, powerful, immediately applicable method for generating more ideas in less time, thinking more like Leonardo da Vinci. So, I've earned my living by teaching people practical things they can do differently so that they can be more creative, be more innovative, be more productive. My clients are businesses, so they want to be better at what they do. So I'm not just holding forums on the meaning and purpose of life. And what's most important to me, what is behind what I do is, there's three. You can see it. Actually, there's
I saw it over your right shoulder. What the listener cannot see is over your right shoulder, there's an easel and a huge pad of paper with clear mind mapping going on.
And you can see there's a branch for Leonardo da Vinci said, fix your course to a star. And by that, he meant find your life purpose, define your purpose. And I have three key words that represent my life purpose. They are creativity, compassion, and consciousness. So learning, creativity is the most important life skill in the sense that's how we find solutions. All human progress has been a function of creativity and then the implementation of that creative idea. So it's amazing to me that it's still not taught in the schools, or that people think it's just to do with the arts. No, it's a fundamental skill for finding solutions for living a successful life. Compassion is the critical key to getting along with others and also to being happy and fulfilled yourself, because compassion begins at home.
Right.
With people who are not compassionate towards others are not compassionate towards themselves. And the key to creativity and compassion for me is consciousness. It's awareness. It's waking up to our true nature and then being able to see the true nature in others. And when you see yourself and see others from a perspective of greater depth of being, when you see people as souls, not objects.
Yes.
As Martin Buber said, you go from the I, it to the I and thou, then you're naturally more compassionate. And then you look for creative solutions to challenges and problems in the world. So consciousness to me is fundamental. So my core tip is wake up.
Yes. Wake up, and probably also mind map as a process of waking up, because I'm guessing that we have all of it. It's almost like our brains are like these aquariums with tons and tons of fish, some of whom hide out behind rocks. And through the act of mind mapping, those perhaps unseen fish show up, and we are able to use it as literally a map in our lives.
It is a simple methodology for accessing the power of your 100 billion brain cells.
Right. Right. And a lot of people believe that we've had this kind of, I believe, erroneous idea that we use 10% of our brains when we actually use all of it. Just the question is, do we use it well? And I am thinking about if somebody were to want to learn how to do mind mapping, A, where would they learn? And B, do you have any just basic tips for them just to get started in the act of mind mapping?
Well, the best way to learn, I wrote Teach How to Do It in the book, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, step by step. And I take the reader through very practical exercises. So I think I wouldn't have put it in there if I didn't think that was my best shot at teaching it to you.
Totally.
Let's get people started now. If I ask you or anybody who's listening, if you think about the last book that you read or TED Talk that you heard or podcast that you listened to, and let's say you needed to give a talk. Let's say someone at work asked you to put together a talk on that podcast or that TED Talk or that book. And if you were to begin thinking about, okay, what was on that podcast, for example, does your mind work in linear outlines or full paragraphs? Probably not.
No.
Right? What happens? You get associations, you get images, you get feelings.
It's more like Wikipedia. You get links.
Words, you get links. Links. So mind mapping is a process for putting down this organic linking nature of how your brain works most comfortably, most naturally. And what it asks us to do is represent our ideas in doodles. Everybody loves to doodle. Your teacher told you not to do it. We tell you, start. So start with some creative doodles about your topic. Print keywords as they arise in your mind. And the reason to print them is just so you can read them later, because you're going to get a lot of ideas by thinking this way. And keywords also tend to be much more information rich. Ultimately, you can give a full presentation with a mind map that has maybe 7 keywords on it. Because if you get the keywords and you put them in clockwise rotation on your mind map, it's going to inspire your associations, and you will find yourself being a much more fluid public speaker. My most recent book is called Mastering the Art of Public Speaking. And one of the chapters teaches you how to make mind maps for all of your presentations. And in all the years I've been working with clients, which is a lot now, one of the things that they tell me that they benefited from the most in the most substantial way is using mind maps to design and deliver their presentations.
Amazing. And yeah, I endorse both the Leonardo da Vinci, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci book, as well as the workbook. Both of them are incredibly helpful midwives into this most important of realms that I think really acts as an insurance policy that will live fuller lives with less left on the table, because we will have excavated our gold mines. So this is really a great gift to humanity that you've come up with. I'm recalling one of my well-intentioned teachers once told me that trying to become good at many things leaves you good at nothing. And I disagree. I think you are living evidence that a person can drill down on a thing and then another thing and get good at a lot of things and then experience kind of a connection of experiences between these seemingly disparate. I mean, you're doing martial arts and the Alexander technique. You wrote a book about wine. You wrote about public speaking and creativity. How would you disabuse that well-intentioned teacher about becoming good at many things?
Well, I think that, that there's some wisdom in that, in the sense that it's easy for people to be dissipated, for people to get distracted, and not to make connections between the different things that they might want to study. So what I would say is that the key is, whatever it is you're passionate about or want to learn, find a way to link that to, first of all, to the benefit of humanity. That's the first point. Whether you go just deep into one topic or some other topics, why are you doing it? Link it. Link your passion with a purpose. Link it with some benefit that might help others. So all of those things you mentioned that I've written books about and that I teach seminars on, before writing each book, I did ask myself this question: what am I most interested in, most passionate about, that I believe will be most helpful for other people?
Mm-hmm.
So it seems, if you look, and I probably probably could have made more money if I crafted out a strategic plan for the logical order to deliver things in and make it a set series so that people would be compelled to buy one thing and the next thing. But I decided I didn't want to operate my life that way. You notice one of my questions wasn't so I could make a lot of money. I did work on the assumption that if I found ways to express myself that were enjoyable, that benefited others, that ought to result in some kind of reasonable energy exchange. And that's worked out really well. So I'm almost horrified at my naivete about money when I first started, because I was such a hippie, I didn't even think about it at all. And I'm so incredibly grateful that the universe looked after me. And, it was a shock when my first client, real business client, wanted to put me on retainer. And I didn't even know what a retainer was.
It's an orthodontic appliance, isn't it?
I was also asked to send an invoice, and I didn't know what that was. I thought an invoice was you have yourself when you can't sleep.
Oh, my inner voice. Right. Somehow the universe shepherded you towards financial success as well, in spite of your naivete. That is really fortunate.
But I think it's not just dumb luck, in the sense that I think if we provide consistent value for others, if we can help people find solutions in their lives, then they will be grateful. And in business, they express their gratitude by paying. And of course, one needs to learn. I got serious about running what I do as a business, as well as my life passion, and finding a way to integrate them. And I even wrote a book about the integration of business with solving the world's most important problems, called The Healing Organization. So follow your passions, but link them to benefits. And then the next stage is find ways to make connections between them. So how does martial arts relate to business? Well, I've been leading strategy seminars for my clients for years, and I give them a talk on strategy, and I use examples from the world of martial arts and chess. I co-authored a book called Samurai Chess, Integrating Strategy from Martial Arts and Chess.
Yeah, I saw that.
Is to link it to business. So I've actually gotten remunerated by clients globally for doing martial arts demonstrations, giving a talk about how it relates to strategy. And then I always tell them, this is my favorite line to say to them, I say, your human resources department won't let us engage in combat. So instead, we're going to play chess. And then I bring in my co-author, who is British chess champion for 14 years and the chess columnist of the London Times for many years. And he plays everybody in a simultaneous display.
Oh my gosh.
He beats them all.
Oh God. Wow.
And then he explains how they failed to apply the strategy principles that I had taught them.
Wow. So they have a real life, immediate example of that learning process. That's profound.
And what's really cool is a lot of times these people are PhDs.
Yeah.
They're engineers. They're very mathematicians, financial analysts. And they get this crushing, humbling experience, which opens their mind to, like, they think they've always been the smartest person in the room.
For sure, yeah.
I bring in the grandmaster and they're no longer the smartest person in the room. Most people have never experienced that much pure intellectual prowess.
Right.
And,
like in the face of a Jedi.
Right. And exactly. But what's cool also is then you say, okay, well, how do you learn to be a chess grandmaster? So you develop a profound memory and you develop pattern recognition. So you've seen, the Roy Lopez opening and every variation of it so many times that you don't have to recreate it.
And by the way, to be clear, a Roy Lopez opening is a chess opening.
You just, pretty much everything that can happen.
Right.
And everything that's ever happened, unless somebody plays an incredibly brilliant new move, which is how chess evolves and which is what makes it so fascinating, is even there seem like virtually unlimited possibilities. people are still coming up with new chess moves, which is creativity in chess, but there's also incredibly powerful memory and then the ability to quickly recognize patterns, which we also call intuition. So I can take learning to play chess and get good at chess and relate it to improving your memory as you get older, for example, because I wrote another book called Brain Power, Improve Your Mind as You Age. So let's say that, this is a group of people who want to talk about improving as they get older. We'll just take this and link it to that need, for example. So, and this is part of this is the seventh principle for thinking like Leonardo, connezione.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why we call geniuses is they make connections that other people don't see. So your well-intending teacher was saying, I don't know how to teach you how to make those connections, so I'm worried that you'll get distracted and become a dilettante.
Right.
So just focus on this one thing, and then we know you'll at least be able to make some kind of living. But that's only because nobody ever helped that teacher learn the skills for making connections between seemingly disparate things.
Sure.
And coming back to where we started, mind mapping graphically, structurally, makes it easier for you to see those seemingly disparate connections.
Which I think is so hugely important. And by sharing that example of that well-intended teacher, I'm not a proponent of, I guess the word would be dilettantism, becoming a dilettante and being somehow under the illusion that one is an expert. That, of course, we always have to check ourselves and educate ourselves, edify with in the presence of masters, perhaps paid consultation and perhaps certification and licensure if the areas allow it and or require it. But one of the things that I was really hitting on was the idea that you just mentioned of connection, connezione. That's the seventh principle in the Leonardo book, as you mentioned, and how crucial that is. And I love that you hit on meaning. Humans are meaning-based creatures. You've cited Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and you and I are both fans of the previous guest on Super Psyched, Michael Meade, who says we are not Homo sapiens, we are Homo symbolicus. We are all about meaning. And I'm sure you're more than familiar with the parable of the three bricklayers, and each of them is asked what they're doing. The first one says, I'm laying bricks. The second one says, I'm building a building. The third one says, I'm building a house of worship where people will be able to get in touch with their greatest selves in their community. And obviously the third example is the one that you are a proponent of, and serving others, and that being the fuel can really, I'm guessing, be the most powerful high octane fuel.
Well, it's also, and the third bricklayer's probably going to have the most energy, love what she or he does more than anybody, more than the other bricklayers, probably be the most successful bricklayer, the most in-demand bricklayer.
For sure.
So I was just actually doing an executive coaching session with a client who was talking about how can I have more energy? And I said, have a higher purpose.
That is so wonderful. Were you able to help him or her get in touch with that? That's great.
Yes. Yeah, we made a mind map together on what that's going to look like, and very energizing for both of us.
And someone listening might actually say, in the midst of COVID or in the midst of whatever crisis they're going through, that they might feel adrift and less in touch with their greater purpose. I'm guessing the aforementioned mind map is one of the best ways to get in touch with it. But do you have any other ways for a person to get back in touch with their higher purpose?
Pray.
What's that? Pray.
Prayer.
Say more about that.
Well, and by the way, it doesn't have to be religious, but it's curiosità. It's asking for what do you wish for? What do you aspire to? There's something about opening yourself and wholeheartedly, the ancient Greeks called it the muses, the goddesses of creativity. You would appeal to the muses for inspiration. So the danger is you're locked in an 800 square foot place for the duration of COVID.
Right.
It is, despair, fear, anxiety. When will this end? It will never end.
Whatever fears show up.
It's just scary. Even if you're in a comfortable, happy situation, it's terrifying. And always use your anxiety creatively. So sometimes you have to be in a deep state of despair to open yourself, to surrender enough, to get out of your own way enough from your everyday yada, yada, blah, 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 mind. People, different names for it. The muses, the creative intelligence of the universe, divine inspiration, God, or however you conceive. There's clearly levels of consciousness, some of which are broader, more illuminating, more liberating than others. Fear, greed, pride, shame, guilt probably are towards the bottom of that hierarchy.
Totally.
Love, joy, peace, compassion are closer to the top of that hierarchy. So acknowledge and notice the feelings of fear, shame, guilt, anger, etc., because we all have them. Now you're awake. You know you're having that feeling. Then what Viktor Frankl says, then the space opens up between stimulus and response.
One of my favorite quotes.
I feel trapped, though. I feel trapped. So I go right into this fearful response. I go right into this angry response. I go right into this shame response. Depending upon your personality type, you either blame somebody else, or you blame yourself, or you're worried about what's going to happen that's going to be even worse. But notice that whatever that is, and then that space opens up. And then you ask the magic creative question is, there must be a better way. What could it be? And then one of the ways is to ask for help. And it doesn't even matter. You don't have to have a clear idea of what you're asking. I mean, if you believe in God, ask God. If you believe in the muses, ask the muses. If you don't believe in any of that, I say, just ask the universe. But when you ask and this is not just stuff I've read in books. This is my own actual experience of the most challenging moments in my life. And the greatest breakthroughs in my life came when I actually just got fully out of the way through circumstances, basically forcing me into total humility and just asking with every fiber of my being for guidance, for help, for insight. And it's happened. I'm telling you, it's the ultimate secret of creativity.
Totally. It's interesting. I don't know if this is my own thought or if I heard it somewhere else, but it's one of these that I've kicked around, and that is never squander a perfectly good crisis. And this is my aphorism for COVID itself has been, this has not by any stretch been the crisis that we've wanted, but it's what we've got. It's the opportunity we've got. And so what are people going to do? And there's been a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, profound amount of loss. And there's also been on the other side, a lot of creativity. And to your point, that is so profound from Viktor Frankl that bears repeating, the space between the stimulus and the response. If somebody cuts me off in traffic, there's not a lot of space between that stimulus of being cut off and my response of anger. And I know that you, in spite of the fact that you and I both really aspire to do better and increase the space, there are certain things that are more challenging than others, but it is asking us, this crisis or any anxiety, as you said, is asking us, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I love the prompt of there must be a better way. And that's such a high quality question. I'm going to go to your workbook in Leonardo da Vinci, chapter 1, where you talk about curiosity, which I think is possibly one of the most important things that we humans can ever rock and is the source of all genius, perhaps. And I was glad that you began it with it. You give a checklist of 10 qualities that we can self-assess our own ability to rock curiosity the way Leonardo himself might have as guideposts. And then you come up with the most brilliant exercise imaginable. It takes about an hour 20, I believe, if it's done correctly. And it's the 100 questions. And you sit down and you write 100 questions. Could you talk about the 100 questions exercise and what gold it might bring to people's lives?
Sure. So yes, one sitting, write 100 questions. If you want, you can choose a theme, but you don't have to stay on it. Just be the first 100 questions you think of. And the only rule is keep writing. Don't lift your pen off the paper. No editing, no crossing out. Just keep going. And a lot of people get so into it, they wind up writing 150 questions. Why 100 questions? Because what happens is the first 20 or 30, you're in your regular habitual mind.
Right.
You get into the middle 40, 50, 60, 70, and people are getting a little tired. Why am I writing these stupid questions?
Totally. That's how I felt.
Yeah. But you keep going, and oftentimes people experience a breakthrough. You access the non-habitual aspect of your mind. And there are many other methodologies for doing this. This is why people would fast and go out into the wilderness or do drumming and chanting. It's ways of shifting you out of your habitual consciousness. These are ways that are evolved in every traditional society. This is just a very clear way that people you don't have to go in the wilderness. You don't have to chant or have incense it's why people seek out psychoactive drugs, because
exactly.
All you need for this is a paper, a pen, and give yourself an hour and a half. If you want to put on some beautiful music, aromatherapy, just to create a little more of a inspiring environment, go ahead and do it. What's fun is, I've been doing this so long now that I can really see over time what are the things that are in my books and in my seminars that I still get. I used to get letters. Now I get emails or posts on social media. One of them, as I mentioned before, is people using mind maps to give their presentations. And the other is how the 100 questions exercise changed their life and helped them make breakthroughs and start ideas, start new businesses based on ideas they got from that exercise.
It's so brilliant. And again, you and I, brothers, I was 22 years old. I was living in Japan. I was teaching metallurgists English, all of whom graduated from prestigious universities, all of whom had a lexicon of several thousand words in English and couldn't put together a sentence to save their lives. They were used to just regurgitating words for the sake of the entrance examination into university, but ask them in real time to speak English, and they couldn't. So I came up with the idea, very similar. The first 5 minutes of class every day, they just wrote whatever came to mind in English, and they were beginning to free their minds. And I speak Spanish and Japanese, and the only way I learned them was by being willing to look like a complete moron a lot of the time. In fact, most of the time. And I think that when you're writing these 100 questions, a lot of the things that we write will be drivel, or if we allow our critic to assess, it will say, this is stupid. It's not stupid. It is the dirt in which gold is found. And I was blown away by the quality of questions. I shared them with my wife. One of my favorite sayings is the quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. And you've just thrown out just a doozy. There must be a better way. I love that as a prompt. And I'm guessing you have other prompts that you might use at times to kind of get you out of a rut. What might those sound like?
Well, I'll get into that. But first, I just wanted for coming up with that marvelous way of getting your Japanese students into the flow of English, because that's one of the universal principles of learning and creativity. It is to take the mistakes that you will inevitably make learning anything and make them on purpose. So that's how I taught myself how to juggle. Because the first juggling teacher, I swear, he said to me, take these 3 balls, throw them up, don't let any of them drop.
No.
And I never would have learned. But I had this aha. I said, no, you can't learn without dropping. I said, what happens if I drop them on purpose and focus on the throw? So, I eventually became a professional juggler. And then I wrote this book called Lessons from the Art of Juggling. And I taught Joan London how to juggle on Good Morning America.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
I did juggle with Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones.
Oh, no way.
But the best part is I got to lead seminars around the world for business groups using juggling as a metaphor for learning. I taught 1,000 IBM engineers how to juggle in a huge hotel ballroom. I had them all start just with 1 ball, which everybody can do. And then they go in groups of 2 and they take 2 and they throw them up and let them drop. And their partner picks the ball up for them. They model collaboration and team support and making mistakes. But it's not really a mistake because I ask you to do it on purpose. And then before you know it, the 2 balls are landing in their hands. So then I put them in groups of 3. And now they throw 3 balls and let them drop and their partners pick them up. And once you can get the balls out of your hands, it's amazing how easily they start landing in your hands. And all of a sudden you're juggling. And to hear a room of IBM engineers exploding when people go, yeah, I got it. I call it their first jugulation.
Nice.
So this is the tip that you asked for too, because it's just reflecting back to the fact that you figured it out yourself, which is whatever it is you want to learn, figure out the inevitable mistakes and make them on purpose. So if you want to learn a new language, practice speaking and mispronouncing the words. And the other tip that you also alluded to, but let's just articulate it for people, is suspend criticism.
Yep.
But notice the key word here is suspend.
Yes.
You will bring back criticism just in its appropriate place. When we prematurely organize, when we criticize before we've had a chance to explore or play or experiment, we do shut down the learning process. So in writing, for example, I say, write drunk, revise sober.
And by the way, just a little note to those of you who may be struggling with an alcohol issue, that this does not apply literally.
It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor.
So let your mind go free, come up with sheer quantity, no judgment, then organize. So write drunk, let it all go, edit sober. Okay, now we're critiquing it. I'm stuck. I never get writer's block because I just go back into the generation mode.
Totally.
But most people don't know that there are these different modes. They just operate in their habitual mode.
Right.
Once you're aware that there are different modes and you have methodologies to go with each mode of thinking, you can shift freely from one to another and be much more effective, creative, and also have more fun, because you just don't suffer with the frustration of, oh my God, I'm stuck. What do I do? Well, get up, do some juggling, do some qigong, go for a walk in nature, listen to some beautiful music, dance around, do a meditation, come back, start anywhere, just like you told your students. Just start with whatever English words you know. Just put them down in any order. Start anywhere on your piece of paper. And then all of a sudden, oh, wow. And you're onto a whole new stream of association.
And I love that idea of desensitizing ourselves to our imperfections by making those imperfections and just becoming tolerant of our own. I'm just going to confess an area where I've not been able to do it. And that's been in dancing. Oh my gosh, I'm terrified of it. In spite of the fact that I'm totally comfortable learning a new language and looking like a moron there, I have profound discomfort around the idea of looking like a moron when dancing. So I'm going to need to, just saying this out loud as a statement, I'm going to challenge myself to apply what you've just said to dancing, because I think that at the end of my life, I will have regretted leaving that on the table. And I love one of the other things that you talk about, and that is arresting the problem. So if we go into despair, if we go into anxiety, that it's arrested with something else, a counter move. And I think that is the best thing we're going to get. What has got us here will not get you there. And we have to do something different. We have to be willing to apply what Carol Dweck out of Stanford describes as that growth mindset and the willingness to improve. It seems to be the big differentiator. And the idea of having a bunch of smart people with your chess master at IBM learning how to juggle, and you providing them with an experiential learning process of being less than amazing at something. I think one of the things that we get into is, well, I'm smart and therefore I have to be smart in everything. And I think that one of the things that makes you different is that willingness to be a novice and go through the growing process and the learning curve. What compels you at this stage of life, when you've already done so much? What drives you now to continue to find new horizons?
It's fun.
Simply put, it's fun. Right on.
And if I may, I want to just come back to you dancing. So if you haven't already done so, experiment with this. Room by yourself. Put on
by the way, I'm already terrified, but go ahead.
Put on your favorite music. Lie on the floor. Start lying on the floor.
Yeah.
Put on your absolute favorite music.
Yeah.
Of different types.
I've already got some in mind.
Okay. And then here's the deal you make with yourself.
Yeah.
I'm only going to move in ways that feel like they emerge from the inside of me. I'm only going to move in ways that feel like they're either my natural response to this music or my authentic expression of how I feel in this moment. And my guess is what will happen is you will begin with the dance of I can't dance.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
And if you learn, and there is no set thing that is, it's just what you do. And if you come from the place of dancing your I can't dance, it'll liberate you for actually dancing. Otherwise, you're just going to be suppressing your I can't dance when you're trying to dance. And we don't want you to be like Elaine Bennis
from Seinfeld. A listener, one of the things that Michael and I share in common is a spectacular love of Seinfeld and quoting it and bringing it into everyday conversation. So Elaine Bennis, for those of you who aren't familiar, she's one of the characters on Seinfeld, and she has one of the most hilarious dance moves of all time.
Right. So that's because she hasn't done the exercise I just made up for you.
The I can't dance. And one of the things I often cite is the 4 stages of learning, which I'm sure you're familiar with. The unconscious incompetence, just like not knowing what you don't know. The first time I got into a car and to drive stick shift, I didn't know that it would involve both hands and both feet in almost like drumming. And then comes conscious incompetence, like, oh my gosh, now I know what I don't know. And then conscious competence, okay, I can do this. I can drive, but nobody better talk to me. And I can't do anything else. All of my RAM space is allocated to this. And then after enough repetitions comes that unconscious competence. And I'm guessing that what you're asking for when I embody the I can't dance is just celebrating the conscious incompetence. Like, I can't do this and I'm just going to rock it.
Yes. And let's also, I love that you brought up the example of learning to drive a stick shift, because for many people that was a traumatic experience when
totally bumps.
Right, trying to learn to do that, stripping the gears of the car, people them getting just intellectual instruction, which then they're unable to translate into kinesthetic responsiveness and using all the senses, the sound of the gears, the feel, and so on. So I came up with a way to teach people how to drive a standard shift car. And it begins by sitting in the passenger seat and just being receptive and using all the senses to listen and watch as someone who's really good at it does it. Just feel the car, listen to the sound, and snap your fingers when you think they're going to shift. So they start to get the feeling and become comfortable with it without any pressure on them. They're not even driving. Then you sit in the driver's seat, but we don't even turn the car on. You go through it in visualization and you imagine driving the car, right? Then the first thing you do when we turn the car on, we say we're going to stall the car on purpose in a big empty parking lot. Right, so it's totally safe.
Right.
We'll stall the car on purpose so you can feel how much clutch is not enough clutch, how much gas is too much gas. You start people out that way, they learn so much faster. It's so much more enjoyable. So these are principles of learning how to learn that I've tried to imbue in a lot of these books.
That's so great. And I think the learning how to learn piece is so essential. And that ought to be taught in school. I know that we teach subjects, but there's so many missing pieces in our curriculum. But I want to talk about AI for a second and Leonardo, these two kind of very discrepant things. In this day of AI, artificial intelligence, many people may think that humans are irrelevant and there's no real reason to cultivate a brain like Leonardo's. What would you say to that?
They might turn out to be right.
Really?
Yeah, but they're not right yet.
Okay.
I spoke at Singularity University a couple of years ago, and I connected with one of the world's leading experts in AI. And he's actually quite optimistic about the benefits for society and that it will make the kind of thinking that we're talking about even more important.
As in Leonardo thinking by humans?
Make Leonardo thinking even more important.
Can you say more about that?
Well, the ability to see the big picture, the ability to think about purpose, the ability to shepherd our efficiencies for the common good, as opposed to factional self-aggrandizement.
Right.
The ethical, moral issues are profound. And maybe someday they could be delegated to AI, but that's the scariest part. So the skill of thinking, I'd say there's a premium on it now. And that premium will only get stronger. And I do believe that people who actually know how to do it will have more and more of an advantage.
Yeah, that's been my belief. And it's comforting to hear that you share that and that perhaps the person over at Singularity University agrees. It sounds like he's got his finger on the pulse of AI, probably more than just about anybody in the world. So that's a very credible source. Getting back to how we relate to humans, you wrote a wonderful book that I highly recommend called The Art of Connection. And another place, I'm telling you, Michael, it's so weird. I've been interviewed on many podcasts around friendship and adulthood. And one of the things that you cover is friendship and some of the basic tenets of friendship, as well as its role in our mental and physical health. I was wondering if you could touch on friendship, like why is it an important thing? And what can we do to become better at friendship?
Yes, it is an important thing because we're healthier, we live longer. What they call in the psychological studies, they call it a perceived sense of well-being, which is a fancy term for they're happier.
Totally.
So people who experience regular positive connection are healthier, live longer, and are happier. They're more resistant to dementia. So yeah, it's an important skill to cultivate the ability to build those connections and relationships. The good news is, by the way, the research shows just in case you don't actually like people, you can get the benefits by connecting with other living things. So you can get the benefits by connecting with dogs and cats and plants.
Yeah, I interviewed Carol Novello, who's the former Humane Society CEO of Silicon Valley, and she wrote a book called Mutual Rescue, in which she describes how our pets who we rescue can rescue us. I know that you've got a four-legged creature there as well. So you and I share that. But yeah, it's nice that you mentioned that. What are some perhaps overlooked tenets of being a better friend?
What a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. Empathy is the first thing that comes to mind, is just putting yourself in the other person's position, looking at the world, thinking about what do they need? What are their needs? And how can I creatively and elegantly meet the needs of the people in my life? I'm really happily married. I think about that every day. And it's not some discipline, or it's joyful. It's one of the big secrets of life you learn ultimately is the key to happiness is making other people happy. The caveat, of course, is using Adam Grant's give and take model.
Love him.
Right?
Wharton School professor.
Right? Three kinds of people: givers, matchers, and takers. So givers' first thought is, I care about you, I'm empathic, how can I take care of your needs? Matchers' first thought is, let's make sure there's an even exchange of everybody meeting everybody else's needs. And takers' first thought is, what's in it for me?
Totally.
And the extreme taker is the toxic narcissist.
Yeah.
So what's fascinating is Grant looked at how well do these people fare in life and what's their distribution in the population. Most people are matchers. There are too many takers and maybe not enough givers. Now, what's fascinating is the people who do the best and the worst on the success metrics that Grant used in his study are both givers.
Yep.
When givers surround themselves with other givers and with matchers, they do really well. But when givers surround themselves with takers, they have nervous breakdowns, they become codependent, their lives are a disaster. So what givers need to learn is to immediately assess who they're giving to. If you're giving to another giver or a matcher, green light. If there's any sign that you're giving to a taker, yellow light or red light.
For sure.
And if you're a matcher, you want to err more on the side of being a giver. So one of the secrets seems to be err on the side of being a giver, but keep your matcher competency.
Mm-hmm.
You're vigilant. And if you're a taker, you don't listen to podcasts and you don't read these kinds of books unless you're trying to figure out how to use that language to better manipulate and rip off the matchers and the givers.
Right. The dark arts.
Yeah, it's the dark arts. So, because they can't be slick, but
I'm glad you brought in Adam Grant and the giver takers matchers. That's such an important piece of research. It's such an important model. I often see the spouses of takers and the person who comes to my office is a giver. It can be very difficult to help them even recognize these patterns that are so toxic in their lives. So I'm really glad you brought that one up. Here in Silicon Valley, within the zeitgeist, there can be and you're a professor at School of Management, business school over at Fordham. So I'm really happy to ask you this. In the zeitgeist, there is the belief at times that in order to be respected, you must be feared as a leader. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that because I personally take issue with that and it doesn't dovetail with my understanding of the research. So obviously I'm leading the witness here a little bit, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are nonetheless.
Yeah, well, we need to put more Geist in the Zeit, spirit in the time.
Yes.
I've been working with companies for over 40 years, and I've seen people become more open, more inclusive, more democratic in their leadership style, more focused on generating love and respect rather than fear and intimidation. And now we have the research to back that up. That's my co-author of the Healing Organization, Raj Sisodia, is the co-founder of Conscious Capitalism. And it turns out that companies that operate from a love-based operating system rather than a fear-based operating system are not just better places to work, they're more profitable,
totally
they're more sustainable. People love them. So we have such an informed workplace, a workplace where people share information instantaneously. If someone's abusive at work today, they're going to get busted. People could get away with all sorts of stuff. You just can't get away with it anymore. So even if you still think, if you're a Machiavellian, you still think, well, this is the way to go. It's not going to work. It's
totally
harder to get away with it. You will ultimately probably get caught with whatever your form of corruption is. So it's just better to not be corrupt.
Totally. It's interesting. You bring up Machiavelli, who is obviously a genius and contributed a large wealth of knowledge. And yet, if you look at the characteristics of a psychopath, one of them is Machiavellianism. And in addition to sadism, sociopathy, as well as narcissism. And I really am glad to hear you say that because, yeah, it might be a short-term way to get people in line, but it's not going to work in the long run. And I think that the victory on the other end, if that is the fuel that you rock as a leader, I think the victory is going to be hollow at the end. Not many people are going to be there at your retirement party or when a person like that is eulogized. They're not going to be remembered so well. And all along the way, it's going to be pretty empty, I think. What do you...
I think the winner of the rat race is still a rat.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, you couldn't see, listener, was I actually fell back in my chair. That is great. One of your other books, you described 10 geniuses, one of whom was William Shakespeare, who may have been one of the best contributors to psychology ever, as well as the English lexicon. You taught me all kinds of things. So when you said a rat, I couldn't help but think of the quote of something smells like a rat, which I'm paraphrasing poorly. I love that. Is there anything so far, that you wish I'd asked, but haven't yet asked?
Just anything that you might wish to ask that you haven't asked.
Okay. Then I'm going to go with my final fantastical question. And that is, Michael, suddenly you are given the magical powers to confer upon all humanity a skill or a trait. What would it be? And what do you imagine would be the impact on humanity? And what do you imagine it would be on the individual within society?
Yeah, it's simple. It would be complete awakening and enlightenment to the fact that we're not actually this body or this blah, blah, blah.
This hamster wheel of thoughts.
Or emotions, that we are spiritual beings. And I would confer upon everyone the ability to see that light and soul and beauty within themselves and all other beings.
What do you think would be the impact on the individual and humanity or society at large if we had that?
I think we'd take better care of each other. I think we'd eliminate much of the suffering Buckminster Fuller, I think then we'd be able to use our creativity to really solve problems because we realize that we're all in it together. Buckminster Fuller figured out 60 or 70 years ago that we had all the resources we needed on the planet to house, clothe, and feed every person on the planet at the standard of a middle-class American. But what we didn't have was the cooperation, coordination in order to execute that. Right now, look, we have this fantastic miracle vaccine, unbelievable work of genius, but we haven't figured out how to get it to everybody. So, and that's partly because there are plenty of people who don't see everybody as all connected, don't see everybody as equally endowed with the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They think only members of their tribe should have it, that right. That tribalism and fear-based turning others into less than human. That's how, how war happens. That's how we kill other people. We dehumanize them. That's how most human caused suffering is caused because we lose the sense of our connectedness with other beings. Now, every spiritual tradition teaches this, teaches love, teaches charity, teaches the oneness of all life and all creation. But if you really think that might be so, how do you act? Because it's one thing to say you believe it or you read it in a book or somebody talked to you about it on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Friday night or whatever. It's another thing to have the experience that the Buddha had that experience. Christ had that experience. Every great spiritual teacher from every tradition was teaching from that experience. So my wish for people would be to have that experience. And then I think we take better care of ourselves and others.
I love that. And I think that's one of the surefire ways of us becoming smarter. I know you've done a lot of investigation into mirror neurons and other things that make us more empathic and more human. And I love that you are such a fan of Martin Buber and his I and thou proposal versus an I and it. And you, even in your book, talk about people, the way they treat, for example, the wait staff is crucial and very indicative of what's going on inside of them and how they might ultimately treat you. And I can't help but think of a Jewish parable of a man dies and is given the option between heaven and hell. And he's given a tour of both. And the first place is hell. And he sees that it's a banquet hall full of incredibly delicious food. And everybody comes out to the banquet hall with these long arms that they can't feed themselves. And so this is hell. And he goes to visit heaven and sees the same banquet hall, same food, same arms, except people are feeding each other and having the best time ever. And I love your idea. And I think that COVID is shining a light on our ability to think more globally. And we're being given a test to do exactly what you're asking of us. And I think that we'll be much smarter on the other end, much more. If you look at all of the geniuses, including, Einstein in your book, we get smarter when we think of others and when we rock empathy. So I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with my listeners. Michael, I've been giddy over getting to hang with you, and I just can't thank you enough.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.